let's take a quick look. And the reason why we're doing all of this right now is because there needs to be an understanding, and this goes for administrators, it goes for teachers, it goes for paraprofessionals, it goes for parents, it goes for students, and also policymakers, what alternative education is in order for it to be effective. Because too often, for district offices and for principals and for leaders, it's all about controlling those kids.
You're
It's all
controlling the
about
outcome.
those kids.
Yeah, controlling the outcome regardless of those kids sometimes.
Well, if you think about it,
Yeah.
it's it's
Yeah,
it,
the
it's
kids.
it's progressively far more racist. It's
Yeah,
far it works against them. And it is showing when they say, we really believe in our populations. No, you don't, because look at how you actually treat them.
yeah. They
So,
depersonalize them in an environment where they're screaming, "We want to personalize everything and make sure you count."
so where we're going next is we are going to take a look at the differences between traditional education and alternative educational approaches. So, mainstream education, also known as traditional or conventional, and alternative education differ in several different ways. So let's first look at the pedagogical approach. So, mainstream education typically follows a teacher centered or didactic approach, where the teacher is the primary source of knowledge and instruction, relies on lectures, textbooks, standardized curricula, and the focus is on delivering a predetermined body of knowledge to students that is delivered and executed within a specific amount of time.
That's a good one. Got them all there.
Alternative ed, they adopt student-centered pedagogies, which emphasize active student participation, hands-on learning, individualized instruction, aiming to cater to the diverse needs, interests, and learning styles of each student,
Mm-hmm. You're not done, are you?
encouraging critical thinking, creativity, and independent learning, and having the place for that student to learn that they have a voice.
And flexible scheduling,
Yes.
flexible timelines in the high school. Hey, the quarter's ending here. I need to get this test in. Grades are going in by Friday. In alt ed, it's like much more flexible. The
And
grades
it's
go
not
in by
just
Friday, but not all of the grades per se. For example, we had kids working at certain paces, and sometimes they really liked a certain subject, and they would do a lot of it real, in one compact time, and all of their credit was in one class or two. But yeah, otherwise, our schedule was flexible. They didn't have to totally. You didn't have to take a certain class in a certain year, that sort of thing. And it wasn't just 9 weeks. If you could do it in 5, great. If it took you 12, that's fine.
hmm
Yeah.
And because I could look at you and I could say, okay, Philip, let's take a look at what classes you still need. Which one do you want to, which one do you want to do next?
Can I do more of the history? I like history. I'm trying to avoid math like nobody's business. That's what they do too. You had to kind of go, well, we have to try the
I'll
one you
tell you
don't
what.
like.
I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
You give me 3 weeks of solid history, of solid math, and I will bring in the history.
And then we'll go, yep, that's the deal. Pretty soon they're like fighting to do the work. When I get my hands on history, it's toast. I'm going to just nail it.
Exactly. Okay, the next one is on structure and flexibility. And that's what we were just discussing, right?
Yeah, it's like that. You said that. The reason I said scheduling is that you had mentioned that before. One of those qualities of the mainstream
Right.
schools was that rigid sort of scheduling, and that's just not there in all day.
Right. Now, conventional education follows a structured and standardized curriculum. It often has schedules, subject divisions, and grade levels. Focuses on covering a broad range of subjects within a fixed time frame. As we said, there's a limited flexibility for students to deviate from the prescribed curriculum.
Right.
In alternative education, the models tend to provide more flexibility in curriculum design and delivery. They may have interdisciplinary or thematic approaches. Students can explore subjects in depth and pursue their own interests.
Individualized.
There's flexible schedules, as Philip was talking about. There's self paced learning and individualized pathways so that the students know where they're going and they have the ownership of where they're going.
They have a clear idea of what the targets are they want to meet. And
And
that's
they
really helpful.
and they're still going to meet the same benchmarks,
Oh, yeah. Otherwise, we don't give them a diploma.
right? Or they don't finish the class.
Right. Yeah. They just don't finish high school if they don't do the same work everybody else does. Well, sorry about that.
They're just going
I've
to
been
do they might just be doing different work in order to get to the same place.
yeah.
So, assessment and evaluation, we talked a little bit about this before. Conventional education relies heavily on standardized testing and grades for assessment and evaluation. The student's performance is often measured against predetermined benchmarks, and grades play a significant role in determining success and progression.
Usually doing it on a curve too. Sometimes there's an awful lot of
And
curves there.
assessments typically focus on content, knowledge, and recall.
Mhm.
Whereas with alternative education, you may often employ diverse and more holistic assessment methods, which might be portfolio assessments, projects, presentations, self assessment, and teacher observations. And the emphasis is on evaluating the overall growth, skills, and development of students beyond academic achievement. And the academic achievement is a part of it, and it's there.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the standards don't change, just the approaches.
Yeah. And the next one you referred to earlier, and I think that we can start moving just a little bit faster on this part simply because we have covered a lot of this.
Yeah.
And so if you are thinking about teaching an alternative ed or you're wondering what you're missing or why it's not working for you, just have a listen to all of this as we've been going, and hopefully it's made some things ring true. So with a teacher student relationship in mainstream ed, teacher student relationship follows a hierarchical structure,
Yes.
and the teacher is the authority, and they know everything. And so the primary role of the teacher is to impart knowledge and to discipline
Keep
and
order.
yeah, keep order. Interactions are more formal and teacher led. In alternative ed, they foster a more collaborative and egalitarian teacher student relationship. Teachers are seen as facilitators or guides working alongside students in the learning process. So they provide support, guidance, and mentorship while respecting students' autonomy and encouraging their active participation. Now, this is actually one of the chief aspects that people cannot reconcile themselves to. They want to be top dog. They cannot give up that ego. They cannot give up that control.
They want to control the outcome of a situation.
Right,
You
exactly.
just can't do it when another human's involved.
And I remember I was working with somebody, this is many years ago, and we were working with positive peer culture. And one day they came in and something happened with the students, and I took care of it. And they said, "You can't do things that way." And I said, "That's how we do it.
Hmm.
That's what we're doing." And they said, "I can't get it. I will never understand this." And I looked at them and I said, "Finally, you may be open to learning." And they were furious with me.
You know,
And they began to fight back.
wow.
So 9 year, no, 10, no, 11 years later, I was able to part ways with them, but they
That
were
is,
never able to give that up.
well, the fact that they had actually missed the cue from you that now you're finally able to learn. You know, it's like you've just admitted that you have kind of a problem. You have a blind spot. Now you can look at it. And they just doubled down on it and said that not only is that not a blind spot, but we won't look at anything. We'll
Well,
not examine that for nothing.
and they never did. They
No,
never
of course
they
not.
they could not move on. If they were in a Henry James novel, they would have been killed off because in
Yeah,
literature, if you cannot change, if you get to a point and there is no catharsis and you cannot change, you're dead.
unfortunately in life people just keep living that way and they're
Mhm.
very unpleasant people to deal with.
Well, they can be. And so for the sake of the student, if you find yourself in that kind of whirlpool, I'm going to say, where you just cannot release that and you can't get out of it, start looking for another position because that's what you need to be able to do.
One of
As
their
I've said
skills.
several times in the Tao of Leadership, the art of letting go is when you realize that you have far more power once you let things go than you did before.
And everyone knows deep in their little heart of hearts that as an individual you want to be valued for your skills and your knowledge. And if you work under a leader who turns to you in a moment and says, I don't have this skill or that knowledge, can I depend on you? You'll go, yes, thank you. And you'll willingly, cheerfully, and full heartedly do it because that's how life works. And instead of, I don't care, nobody knows more than I do, and no one has better skills than I do, and I don't need any of you jackwagons here. Tells everyone, God, what am I doing with my time?
Okay, the last one for this component, which is learning environment and culture.
Yeah,
Mainstream education is often characterized by a large class size, standardized routines, and a focus on discipline and conformity.
which becomes the culture.
Right? The culture may be more formal, and the emphasis is on meeting predetermined educational goals and benchmarks. With alternative ed, those often prioritize creating supportive, inclusive, and nurturing learning environments. Culture is often more relaxed and student centered. It fosters creativity, collaboration, and respect for individual differences. Alternative education may prioritize social emotional development, community building, and a sense of belonging. So, mainstream education has tried to use a lot of these components of alternative ed, but believe that the student teacher relationship, the hierarchy, that is where I'm going to say the biggest problem lies because the entire school system is built on hierarchy.
That's exactly its problem. That's its purpose. And that's the reason that's its ultimate objective is to control the learning environment and administrate the curriculum to students. An
Mhm.
alternative educational environment is to work with students in a learning process that is cooperative and meaningful toward the end of a project or the gaining of knowledge. It doesn't say what knowledge, it just says, in this case, it'd be the standards, the same standards the high schools go for, I might add. But you support the student instead of administrate discipline and curriculum. And that's what's going on in the mainstream. It's just an administrative fest of discipline and curriculum. There's no life
Right.
to it. Yeah.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's look at the benefits and potential impact of alternative education on students. We have so much material in here.
Yeah.
Okay, the benefits and potential impact of alternative education on students. Remember, we're talking about some of the most disenfranchised students that we have. We have students who have been suspended, possibly expelled, possibly. We have students who have, for whatever reason, been found guilty of truancy, or maybe they just don't fit in with their peers.
The high school just don't like them.
Yeah,
They
they're,
don't like the school. Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
what's really interesting is I can't count the number of students who go into an alternative program. And I know that this happens with you too, where they turn around and say, I didn't like school until I came to you.
Those are sweet words. I've heard them more than once. Yeah.
So it's almost like the fountain of youth. So,
Kind of.
okay,
Yeah.
active student participation.
Well, guess what? If things are relevant and the relationships are good, then
Mhm.
they want to participate. They look for ways to participate.
It may take some oiling
Oh,
to get them to move.
because they're moody little suckers. I mean, it's
They
like
are.
you can't be that down for 3 days and then start moving. Yeah, it's like,
Well, you'll still get some students that still want to be in their little
yeah,
dark cloud or whatever they have. But
yeah, and you
you
just
know, you do your best, but you still foster that relationship. And even if it's just their interaction with you,
yeah.
you're good to go.
That's exactly it. Even though they, yeah, although if they know that you care and that, yeah, they know you've been down for
Mhm.
3 days. Oh,
Yeah,
he's been
because
camping too.
you don't know every student's backstory.
No, I don't. And it's a
So
lot more than my 11. What was it? 9 to 13% influence we have on them, or some silly number like this.
no, we have a 1 to 14%.
That it just one. The one thing's killing me. One. I only got one. I know
Well,
the 14. The one I can't accept. My mind rejects
well, I
that.
have a feeling that the one is those are the kids that just aren't there.
I guess because I just can't believe I only had a 1% effect. I worked
Okay,
hard.
okay. Holistic development, and we
Uh-huh.
talked about that. That's
Yep.
their emotional, social, and physical well-being,
Yeah. All
where
of
they
it.
can incorporate art, music, movement, experiential learning, nurturing creativity, emotional intelligence, and overall well-roundedness. And then we have flexible curriculum and pace. We talked about that, where they can delve, like you going into your rabbit hole in math, and you get to play archaeologist. And so there's a lot that might come up with
I
that.
would love that. Yeah, actually.
The flexible curriculum and pace. We've spent a lot of time on that. Enhance social skills and community engagement. We spent time on that, where as opposed to just being a number or being lost in the crowd, you're actually a participant. You're actually a vital member of this community, and the biome actually takes effect. And you have, it doesn't matter which alternative program I'm working with, it happens all the way around. Everybody knows everybody for the most part. Maybe they don't know their name, but they know who they are. So, which is much better because you can't get lost in an alternative program,
No, you shouldn't be able to be.
right?
That would
So,
defeat the purpose in a lot of ways if you got lost there.
and you also are involved in the decision making, and you have the social, emotional, or the social responsibilities that go along with that. And it's not that all of a sudden you're imbued with these with all of these talents in order to handle all of that, but you have an opportunity to learn them. And as you practice them, then once you go out into the community, they'll stay with you. And it can give you a sense of justice. It can give you a sense of not entitlement so much, but that you have an air of confidence about you because you kind of know what it is that you're doing.
That
And
was the word that occurred to me, confidence. Yeah.
yeah, increase creativity and critical thinking.
Well, I mean, if you're in charge of what it is you're going to critically think about and imagine, you tend to be a little bit more focused and a little bit more involved with
Right, because you're feeding your curiosity,
it.
right?
Right. It feels good. It's what's known as autotelic, addictive. Yeah.
Yeah, and many of our students are highly creative, and so they think widely out of the box. And so sometimes that has always been debilitating in mainstream classrooms rather than something that they can work with and they can kind of take that and go somewhere with it. Or maybe they have an interest that you hadn't thought of, but maybe it's their interest. And so you and they can go down another path. So potential impacts can depend on the specific approach and individual experiences. Some potential considerations to consider would be transition challenges. Students transitioning from traditional schools to alternative or vice versa. If a student is going from alternative ed into the mainstream, that may be very difficult for them because it's a completely different learning environment. You're going from someplace that we would hope is warm and cozy and works with them to something that is rather cold and just a machine.
Yeah, we already determined the objective of the mainstream is
Mhm.
to keep discipline and administer curriculum.
Right. And then limited exposure to certain subjects where you could do exploration in alternative ed and you could gain deeper knowledge, and you can't do that in a mainstream classroom.
It's
Yep.
it's interesting to note the insistence upon doing one's own thing. You know, like I want to learn about this, and everyone's looking at that, going, "No." They kind of look like a troublemaker. You know, so the very enthusiastic learner who doesn't quite have the social skills to express them quite well becomes a troublemaker real quick in that environment. It's kind of
Well,
sad.
once again, we're talking about ego, control, and domination.
Yeah, it's like you don't understand, kid. I got a schedule to meet, and you doing a project on that particular thing. Don't meet the schedule. That's not something I'm going to do. Yeah,
Right. And, recognition and alignment with traditional systems. They don't get the recognition as maybe they would if they were working with you, Philip. Maybe in your class of 12 to 15, that they could get some kudos, that they could get some good jobs as they're working on something, or even just having the knowledge that you're there working with them because they're working full time to help support their family and they've got all these other things going on outside of school. And you're not giving them extra work to do outside of school. And so the fact that they can get that work done and they have that ownership of what they're doing, whereas you have you have Simon Legree, in a sense, lording over you, telling you that you must do these things if you're going to get there, without any consideration of what your life circumstances are.
50% of
As
the grade is the homework. You figure out how to get it done.
exactly.
Yeah,
And so it's essential to consider that the benefits and impacts of alternative education can be subjective and dependent on individual student needs. But that's what we're emphasizing, is that it's about the student.
it's always subjective about the student or the subject.
Mhm.
That's never about me.
And so the next piece that we were going to get into would be the gaps and challenges of providing comprehensive training for teachers in alternative education. But instead, because we've really run over time, I want to save that for next week.
Yeah, that's a
And
good
so
idea.
when we do part two, so let's look at what we talked about so far this week, right?
Let's
And
do it.
okay,
A bunch
we
of
talked,
us. I want to hear it.
well, we defined alternative education in its various forms. We looked at non-traditional. We talked about what are the differences between alternative education and mainstream education. We talked about some of the pedagogies. We talked about some of the overreigning influences of what we're talking about. And I think we also talked about, and I love the way that McQueen talked about it, which was leave your ego at the door. You
Yeah,
got to leave your ego at the door.
if you had to make it like one sentence thing, that would be it.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And know that it's about the students. And if they lash out at you, maybe because you allowed them to feel safe about lashing out against you.
yeah. If they feel secure enough to chew you out unreasonably out of nowhere, they love you.
They do.
They do. They feel secure.
Right.
Yeah.
So next week, what we're going to do is we are going to start off with talking about the gaps in teacher training that would benefit teachers in order to work in alternative education so that we could have more teachers who actually knew what they were doing and not just getting the on the job training that they really don't get, and they have no idea what they're doing. And so it's the reason why things come out so cockamamie sometimes, and you have other groups who take over and say we're alternative ed, and they are anything but. They're simply
Yeah,
a
we have
color.
answers to those questions of
Well, I'm glad you do.
what people should be taught and why the systems don't work. Once they get out
Right.
there.
So we're going to be
Oh, yeah.
talking also about addressing all the different challenges that face teachers when they come into alternative ed. So that being said, Philip, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been a
Fun stuff.
pleasure, and I look forward to next week. And to all of our viewers and our listeners, thank you. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye. Hey, everybody. This is Tony. Thank you so much for watching the video. We've got more coming that go right along with this. So if you want to know what's next, go ahead, hit that subscribe button. Go ahead, hit that like button, because that helps with the algorithm, and that's what allows us to do this. So if you like what you see, share it, subscribe, and join us again when the next videos come. And we do have a catalog growing, so we hope to see more of you. Okay? Thank you.